I'm Rebecca Lovingood, and I am representing Hodgkins Lymphoma today. The month of September is the month for the lymphoma cancer support, and purple is the color of lymphoma cancers. I learned I had Hodgkin's lymphoma back when I was in college, my final semester of college back in 1982. Actually, I did not learn about it until 2 years later. I started coming down with every single bug that was going around, colds, sore throats, everything else like that. And I went to see my doctor, and I wound up in the hospital for pneumonia and pericarditis, and eventually they discovered I also had tuberculosis. But there was this lymph node that was in my chest that was enlarged, so they watched it for 2 years. And after 2 years, I wound up with a lymph node that was enlarged in my neck, and they were able to biopsy it. And they actually came up with a diagnosis of Hodgkin's, at which point it was actually almost a relief to know what was going on. And so I could actually name what it was, which was Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was stage 2 asymptomatic. So I did not have any symptoms at all, but since it was in more than one lymph node, it was stage 2. Actually, for Hodgkin's disease, no. It's a very slow-growing cancer. It was not detrimental to my prognosis and everything else like that, although I did wind up with having Hodgkin's twice. But they were afraid that if they biopsied the lymph node that was in my chest, it was right behind the aorta, and they were afraid they were going to nick the aorta and I would bleed out before they could do anything. So by waiting those 2 years, since it is such a slow-growing cancer, that actually worked out in my favor. In the United States, Hodgkin's lymphoma is a fairly rare cancer, but approximately 9,500 people each year are diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Of that, about 4,000 or so women are diagnosed with it. It's less than 50% for women versus men. There are 3 types of Hodgkin's lymphoma. One is a childhood version, one's the young adult version, and one's the older version. Most people are diagnosed with the young adult version between the ages of 15 and about 35, and that's the most common version. There's also one for the older people who are diagnosed after they're about 55 years of age. Most people, yes, but with me, it was asymptomatic. So other than the fact that I was getting sick with everything, and I just happened to go in for an X-ray, we would not have known that there was even a possibility. But after that X-ray, the doctors were watching me very closely and just monitoring me. But the symptoms that most people tend to get, if they have symptoms, it's fevers, night sweats, weight loss, and in rare occasions, some bone pain. And there's also another rare, interesting side effect or symptom is with some people, when they drink an alcoholic beverage, wind up in pain. So the alcohol somehow triggers pain. But that's a fairly rare side effect as well. For Hodgkin's lymphoma, basically, since it is a cancer of the lymphatic system, the system that helps fight off diseases and fights off, illnesses. If you wind up something's unusual and you're ill for some other reason and nobody can figure out why you are getting ill, have them look into the possibility. Initially, I had a very good general family doctor who, if there's something wrong, he would find out what it is. And that's usually the person who would initiate the stuff. After that, it's depending on what your symptoms are or whether you have a lymph node that's enlarged. And most often it shows up in the neck. Mine just happened to show up in the chest. Biopsy, so you'd see a surgeon and an oncologist. But the surgeon would be the one that would biopsy the lymph node. And from there, you would develop, the treatment plan and who else you would be seeing. I started off with my treatment with surgery. That's typical. You have your spleen removed, part of your liver removed, and a number of lymph nodes biopsied or removed so that they could determine what stage you are in. Once that's done, then the next progress was I went to radiation, and then when my cancer came back 3.5 years later, I went through chemo. They've changed that program now, and people go straight from surgery into chemo. They have found out that the chemo is less, I don't want to say invasive, less problematic to the body in the long run than the radiation. Radiation caused other issues. Well, Hodgkins lymphoma is the lymph system. And your lymph system goes through your entire body, your neck, your underarms, chest, groin, behind your knees. So your lymph system covers your entire body. It is a type of blood cancer, and the spleen filters the blood. And so by having so if it's going to go into another organ other than your lymph system and your lymph nodes, the first one tends to be the spleen and the liver, because those two filter out the blood. So you can live without a spleen. It stores the blood. It helps your white cells develop and mature. It's kind of like a nursery, but you can live without a spleen. So it's a preventative thing is to have your spleen removed. With COVID, no, it was not a concern for me. I've lived now, I think it's 35 years without my spleen. I don't tend to get sick very easily, and I did the precautionary things if I got vaccinated. So, the spleen helps, but it is, living that long without a spleen and not coming down with every single illness that went around. I know my immune system is robust enough to be able to handle most things, and I was hoping I'd be able to handle COVID. And so far, so good. Actually, no. There's nothing preventable when it comes to Hodgkin's. Hodgkin's lymphoma, there has been some recent studies that seem to indicate that it may be viral induced with the Epstein-Barr virus, but there are also possible environmental issues, and there may be some genetic susceptibility. It is not a genetic cancer. You cannot pass it down to your children or have the gene for it from your parents. There's not a genetic component, but there may be a susceptibility that means your lymph system may be susceptible to the viral or the environmental conditions. So a little bit of both. Back when I went through the radiation, the chemo, and the entire cancer process, and then the 2 additional times when I've had breast cancer due to the radiation I received, there was, especially when I started off, there really was not a support group. So there are still some issues that I am going through, but in many ways it was a celebration that, hey, look, I've survived this far, I'm a warrior, this is who I am. But also, the I also know with the radiation I went through and some of the damage that there's a possibility I could develop other cancers or other issues. And the Unite Sisterhood is a wonderful support group. We are here for each other. We are here to share ideas as to how we can, get through this together. So I was looking toward Unite as a way to be a support group. As I've said before, it's not a pity party. We are here to support and raise each other up. I'm hoping that the world can see a warrior, someone who is willing to get out there and fight and be there for each other and try to make this world a better place. But this cancer itself is one of the most survivable cancers. So it is something to take, to be aware of and be concerned about if you are diagnosed with it. But you can also live your life, not merely just exist through it, but get out there and enjoy the small things. And I hope people realize that this is life and we need to experience each and every moment. I do have some advice to anyone who has cancer. I would suggest that you are comfortable sharing your diagnosis, and that's a very personal decision, but share it with your friends and your family and other people you may know. You may not realize how many other people have had cancer that will come forward once your diagnosis is known, and they are usually very helpful with ideas of how to support, how to get through this, life hacks that might make it a lot easier. And there is a wonderful support system through your doctors, through the nurses, and they are there to help you and support you and will do everything in their power to make your life easier. And look at me. I've now managed to make it through 35 years of living with cancer. It does not define me, but it is part of me.